the dog poo on your way home, you always take it home with you and dig it under your mango tree. So what a wonderful thing it is that you manage to tread in the stuff, so that you can have more fertilizer for your mango tree. So 1 year later, your mangoes will taste sweeter than the year before. Why? Because of the dog poo. I always tell people, as I said before, when you eat that mango, so sweet and juicy, you must always remember what you're eating. Dog poo transformed into juicy, sweet mango. And that's a very good simile, because when you know how to use the pain and the hurt of your life, you can churn it into sweet compassion, juicy wisdom, which will give you so much happiness, and happiness for the people around you. So first of all, that it's in your own interest to let go of the pain of the past. And it's also in other people's interest to forgive. Because when we don't forgive, we are punishing ourselves and punishing others. And unfortunately, we live in societies which think that if we punish somebody, then they won't do it again. And if we punish somebody, there will be a deterrent. It does not work that way. You may all know that in the prisons of our world, whether it's in Malaysia, Australia, or United States, when you send a person to prison for some crime and they get released, they go back there again. So is punishment really helping anyone? In Buddhism, we don't do punishment. That was one of the things which I was really impressed with when I first came across Buddhism. There was none of this punishment and hurting other people. If somebody did something wrong to you, you just let it go. It was their karma. Why would you need to punish them? Karma will get them. If they've done something wrong, you know the law of karma will make them hurt eventually. So you don't need to punish them. You can actually put aside that responsibility, knowing that the law of nature will eventually get back to them and karma will hurt them. So you don't need to be the punisher. Karma will get them. But more than that, we find out that when we don't do the punishing, there's a sense of healing can happen. Look, to understand about punishment in Buddhism, I like telling the story of one of the young men who came to train as a monk in my monastery in Perth. They call them anagarikas. In my monastery in Perth, it's a training monastery for monks. So I call it not so much a monastery, but a monk factory, where we make monks. We've also got a nun factory where we make nuns as well. So that's my job. I own 2 factories. And of course, as like any other factory, you've got to look after your raw material first of all. So these young men came in, and I've got to make sure that when they come out of my factory that they're good quality monks. Quality control, QC. It's important in a monastery as it is in a factory. So we have a training there. And the first year of training in my monastery in Australia, they have to keep 8 precepts for the first year. And if they do well, keeping 8 precepts like you're keeping here on this retreat, the second year they can become a novice monk, keeping 10 precepts. And if after 2 years they've shown by their conduct and just their commitment, they're worthy of becoming a bhikkhu, a monk, then I will ordain them as a monk. So a 2 years training first of all. Now this was a story of a young man who came in to start his training. So we gave him the 8 precepts, and one of those precepts, as you should know, is not eating anything after noon until the following dawn. You can have some juice, you can have some chocolate, but nothing solid, no rice or no curry, no bread or whatever. And this young man, he'd been taking the 8 precepts for about 6 weeks, or almost 2 months, and he came to see me one afternoon. He said, I haven't slept the last night. I feel so guilty. I've done a terrible thing. Yesterday afternoon, he said, I was so hungry. I went into the kitchen when no one saw me, and I made myself a sandwich, and I ate it. I broke my precepts. So what did I tell him? I said, it's wonderful that you've confessed. Thank you for telling me. Now, I told him, there's other things you can eat in the afternoon, like get some honey if you're hungry, put a bit more sugar in your drink, have some orange juice or some apple juice or something, because you can eat that in the afternoon, and that will stop you getting hungry. Eat more at lunchtime so you don't feel hungry later on. Okay, so thank you for telling me. This is what you should do so you don't ever do it again. Now you can go. He said, is that all you're going to do? Just let me off? I said, yeah. He said, are you going to punish me? I said, no. And he said, if you don't punish me, I'll do the same again. Because that's his character. So he really put me in a bind. He wanted some sort of punishment or penance. So I quickly thought, what is sort of punishment or penance does this guy really deserve? As it was, that morning, I was reading a book about the history of Australia. You know that Australia started as a convict colony, where the British sent the worst of their criminals over to Australia, and they treated them like slaves. And whenever any of those convicts in Australia misbehaved, they were punished severely by whippings with a cat of nine tails. And that was a very, very vicious punishment. But I've just been reading that morning, about how they would whip these convicts with a cat of nine tails. And so, that being fresh in my mind, I told this young man, I said, I've got a very good Australian punishment for you. I sentenced you to 50 strokes of the cat. And this poor young man, his jaw dropped, his face went white, all the colour drained from him, and his lips started to quiver. He thought, my goodness, that's not what I wanted. Ajahn Brahm's going to whip me. And then I told him what 50 strokes of the cat mean in a Buddhist monastery. At that time, we had 2 cats. Find one of them and stroke him. 1, 2, 3, and learn some compassion, you hard-hearted young man. And that was why he wanted punishment, because he didn't know compassion. And 50 strokes of the cat. Now find a nice fluffy cat or kitten or a dog, stroke it 1, 2, 3, 50 times to learn some kindness. It's only through compassion and kindness can we learn the importance of forgiveness. So we don't have punishment, but certainly we have strategies to teach people to be more kind and more compassionate. Recently I was teaching a retreat over in my retreat centre in Serpentine in Australia. And there was one Singapore girl who was on the retreat and she'd done something wrong and she felt guilty. And when I was talking with her in an interview, nothing I could do to take away her feeling of guilt. We didn't have any cats in that monastery. But we had a rabbit. So I sentenced her to 50 strokes of the rabbit. So she found that rabbit, and as she stroked it, she started weeping. To realize that she can be kind enough to herself to forgive the faults. It was a very beautiful moment for her, when she realized she didn't need to punish. Because what happens when you punish? Just really, do you change? No, usually you still do the same things again. I remember at school, whenever I was punished because I did something wrong, all I ever learned was not to get caught next time. To be a bit more sneaky, so that teacher didn't find what I was up to. That's all I learned, how to be sneaky. And I remember just going into prisons so many times, teaching prisoners about meditation, teaching them about Buddhism. And one day, because I'd become an abbot and because I was traveling all over the world, like here in Malaysia, I just didn't have any time to go to the prisons anymore. So I gave that job to another monk. actually several other monks. They're still going there doing a great job. But I remember on this one occasion,